Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there and having yourselves a great start to your weekend. I got you a pretty big update on the tropics to kickstart your weekend. We'll get very detailed in this video. We'll talk about two things, one being Franklin, and we will talk about what's going on, what could potentially go on in the Gulf of Mexico as we get into next week. There's a lot of chatter ongoing, and in my opinion, I think the chatter is completely warranted as there is a legit threat for at least a tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And yes, this could impact obviously the Gulf shoreline as it's in the Gulf of Mexico, Florida, maybe even as far west as Alabama, Mississippi, as far south as maybe the tip of Florida. Okay, this entire area needs to at least be aware what potentially can unfold. So that's what we're going to do here on this video. We're going to talk about the details. We're going to talk about model guidance, compare all model guidance, talk about how strong this could potentially get, maybe some of the high-end scenarios, maybe some of the low-end scenarios, what's driving this, and just really break it down for you folks. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you're new to my channel, welcome. It's a family type atmosphere. There's no crazy really things with this channel. I just do it in my bedroom and we just talk weather and we pray for one another. We look out for one another. It's a great family type personal atmosphere. So welcome to any new people that's tuning in this evening. With that being said, if you guys do have anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. If it's unspoken, just put that, and I can guarantee you not only I will pray over it, but I promise you a lot of other people will too. So with that being said, let's get rolling. The National Hurricane Center latest update, there'll be another update that actually drops probably by the time I get to the end of this video. Typically another update drops around 7:30 to 8. In fact, let's go on and update this and see if there is any new information. There is not. I don't expect much to change with this. When you look at this, you're immediately thinking this looks like peak hurricane season, right? You got a new area of interest coming off of the western coast of Africa. This will eventually get out into the main development region, which is the tropical Atlantic, this area out here. We're not going to talk about this or this or this. This is not of a concern really at all. It probably will never be. But this is definitely a lot of energy out here in the North Atlantic. But as of now, just going to do nothing but bother the ocean and the fishes out there. We got Franklin, 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It is struggling mightily this evening and has been all day. We'll give you an update on Franklin for the second half of the video. For the first half of the video, we will discuss this, which is an area of interest. It is an invest, has an 80% chance to develop. It's invest 93L, has an 80% chance to develop in the next 7 days. But this is really in the next probably 3 to 4 or 5 days, okay? The only thing that I expect to change with this on the next update from the National Hurricane Center sometime this evening into overnight is maybe this goes from a 80 to a 90% chance to develop. But none of this information is really going to change what I'm discussing in this. It just might go up another 10%. So let's go on and move forward here. We take a look at the satellite out in the Western Atlantic. This basically shows us the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico up here, and then the Southwest Atlantic over here. So we'll talk about Franklin here in a second, but this is Franklin. Franklin is struggling. Basically, it's getting blasted by a westerly flow, creating westerly shear. So basically, it's pushing and shutting off all of its shower and storm activity to the east of the center of circulation, which is right here. So it's highly sheared, and basically its low-level circulation is pretty much exposed. But we'll talk about that here in a second a little bit more. If you notice right here in the middle of your screen, out here in the Northwest Caribbean, right on top of Western Cuba and the Yucatan, we got a big area, broad area of unorganized shower and storm development just popping off here. And we expect it to look like this, the same, probably over the next couple days, the next 48 hours at least. There's very light steering currents ongoing right here. So basically, there's nothing really tugging on this moisture one way or the other. Now, how did this get about? Well, you see this upper low right here, which was once a big giant upper trough that basically expanded over this entire region right into here. This eventually got pinched off, and this is just a kind of spinning upper low right here. And this has actually helped yank a lot of moisture out of the monsoon trough, which is typically always down here northward. So you got a big area of moisture right in this area. Now it's pretty dry out here in the central Caribbean, okay? This is actually helping to limit any development right now, but it also is competing with land masses, and we know that tropical systems struggle with land masses. They're not going to develop over land. They develop over water. But in general, guys, this is what we're looking at right now. this is kind of the origins, right, of what could eventually develop and then get pushed northward. And we'll talk about how it eventually pushes northward here in a second. So let's go on and break this down in a detailed way. So what you're looking at here is this steering current. So this is winds about 40,000 feet up in the air, 200 millibars, okay? If you want to know how that converts to feet, just literally type in millibars to feet, and it'll tell you. It's about 40,000 feet up in the air. So this is the flow way up above our heads, okay? So you see this, you see the streamlines right here, see these arrows? They kind of go around like this, then they go around like that. This matches up well with what I just showed you, right? You see this little spin? Okay, you can see that same little spin right here, right? So it matches up with what's going on currently. So basically, this will continue. And you notice why Franklin is struggling so much, right? You got this flow that's just coming in like this and just whiplashing this storm. This is that westerly flow that's affecting Franklin right now, which is why it's not strengthening at all. In fact, it's weakened. Okay, but this kind of flow right here, which was once a full-fledged upper trough, is just kind of an upper low right now, and this is what's basically pushed this massive broad spin into areas of the Western Caribbean. So this is where it's at. So let's get this back off our screen, and let's keep the ball rolling here. And if we move this in time, this eventually disappears, and it's not really a factor anymore, okay? You watch it just kind of dwindle away. It's not a big factor. So what happens now, based off the European model, we got a low pressure somewhere in this area. You know, the bringing operational Euro is basically showing an L right over the Yucatan, right? So you got shear over here, you got shear down here. You basically got this upper flow around this. Kind of like an anticyclonic flow, a ULAC, weather terminology. We won't get deep into that right now unless we need to. So basically, there is very light flow over this broad level spin. So that's why if I keep this going, we're into tomorrow afternoon at this point. You keep this rolling, this L is not moving much. We're getting into Sunday morning. We're getting into Monday morning. It's just, I can almost guarantee you that by the time we get into Sunday night and we're making another video, it could look very similar to what this looks like right now. Not much different, okay? It's once we get into, I would say, Monday, you see this little feature right into here, bringing sort of a flow down here. This is basically kind of a shortwave trough, excuse me, an upper trough. This swings down, and you notice this L gets really close to these streamlines right here. So this actually helps dive in and finally pick this L up and move it north, which is our low pressure. I know I'm calling it an L, our low pressure. So this dives down here, and let's get this back in motion here. This dives down here and picks this low pressure, finally surges it into the areas of the Gulf of Mexico, and here it is. You see it. You see how it's bending down. This actually creates a flow that's yanking this northward, and that's exactly what happens. And here's that L. Finally, as we're getting into Tuesday morning, we have a system that's moving north. Now you see all this blue up here. This is big time shear because of a digging trough in the eastern U.S. This also has a factor, a massive factor, and often does in hurricane season, because once you get deeper into hurricane season, the more troughs that dig further south and eastward, okay, just with the changing of the seasons from summer to fall. So this is a big steering current factor here, and this moves, and this will actually help aid in some shear on the northern side of this low pressure. So we're getting into Tuesday afternoon. This is where our system is. Shear's diving down, but this is actually also helping in a picking up kind of method where it's picking up this low pressure, and you see these arrows going this way. So you basically got this flow going like this, going like that, and it's picking this up and moving it towards Florida. But there is shear at the bottom of this trough that's basically limiting and countering those warm sea surface temperatures that a lot of people just assume is going to explode a tropical system, but is relatively light, okay? So this continues and eventually gets yanked into the Big Bend areas of Florida sometime Wednesday morning. So I know that's a mouthful, but I think that was, I explained that probably one of the best ways I've done it in a while. I feel like I've been struggling in my videos to explain stuff. I hope that makes sense. But eventually this trough picks this up, slings it over Florida, and eventually could potentially affect the coastal areas of the southeast. So that's actually what we're going to talk about now. Let's compare and contrast some model guidance. So we'll talk about what this looks like as far as precipitation, things like that. And we're getting into Tuesday morning. And I really think as we're getting to Tuesday morning, we could be dealing with a named storm, which, I'm 10 minutes into the video and just talking about what the next named storm is, which is Idalia. Edalia, I believe is how you spell Idalia. And I think this will be Idalia by the time we get into early next week. This low pressure, always remember when this millibar number drops, that means we got a strengthening system. This continues to chug northward. And then by the time we're in a Tuesday evening, we can actually switch it to this. This is actually starting out Tuesday afternoon. We got a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure. I would say a 997 millibar low pressure is probably either a strong tropical storm, or like a 75, 80 mile per hour category 1 hurricane. But this continues, strengthens very slowly. Take a deep breath, running out of breath here. And makes landfall sometime Wednesday morning into the Big Bend areas of Florida. Not a super highly populated area, but we know with the curvature of the Florida coastline right here, this could bring some big time storm surge into this area. And I can tell you the Euro does have a weak bias, which basically means that the Euro is always going to probably pump out a weaker low pressure than what maybe actually happens. So latest Euro plows this weak Category 1 hurricane, strong tropical storm into the Big Bend areas of Florida sometime Wednesday morning, August the 30th. Cruises over North Florida, gets all the way into southeast Georgia, grinds it. Tropical storm force conditions into this region. And then look at South Carolina. I mean, Wednesday evening, you're dealing with probably tropical storm force conditions if the Euro is correct. All along the South Carolina coastline, even into southeast North Carolina, even the Outer Banks, and eventually, as we're getting into late next work week, this finally heads out into the Atlantic. So this isn't just a Florida thing, guys. It's not. I think that we need to remember that. The latest GFS, which finally decided to greet us all today with its presence because it's been just out in the woods lately, finally is forming a tropical system. But of course, it went to nothing to just a full steam ahead. And now the GFS, which is, I will say, much further west than other model guidance. Sorry, guys. I think I got a sneeze coming. All right, we're good. We're getting into Tuesday afternoon, 994 millibar low pressure, weak hurricane, strong tropical storm. This continues to this basically goes south to north. It just goes due north and heads right into the panhandle of Florida. Tuesday evening, this is a 986 millibar low pressure, most likely hurricane, and strengthens at a very slow pace, but makes landfall sometime Wednesday morning and Wednesday afternoon as a sub 990 millibar low pressure tropical system, which would probably be a hurricane. Okay, would be a much more significant system, obviously, because it's stronger, but it'll be more significant for everybody because it works its way further west, so it impacts more land before eventually, inevitably, heading back out into the Atlantic. So we got to watch this. Okay, and I know a lot of people, maybe in Mississippi, Alabama, or even southeast Louisiana, are tuning in like, this doesn't look like it's going to affect us all. You never know. You never know. And it all depends on how quick that trough moves in way over here. Okay. But it makes landfall, hurricane force conditions. This basically it has a hard time moving east. This basically heads all the way up to Atlanta, cruises right through the middle of Georgia. The GFS says sometime Wednesday night into Thursday morning, this would bring flooding rains into the southern Alps region. And eventually this gets back over the ocean, but it completely weakens because it stays over land longer. Now, the Canadian model, okay, here it comes Tuesday morning. It moves in, I would say, a good bit quicker. It makes landfall Tuesday night into the panhandle of Florida. So it's also kind of favoring the GFS as far as a little bit further west, and makes a landfall as around a 990 millibar low pressure, weak Category 1 hurricane, strong tropical storm. Same kind of deal. Brings a ton of moisture into Georgia, strong winds, South Carolina, even into North Carolina. Midway next week, and heads back out. Okay, and then you look at the Icon, the latest one from the one that just literally came out, throws everything a curveball. Okay, the Icon can do decent with the tropics. It's not a terrible model, but gets into Tuesday morning. You got 1,000 millibar low pressure. You're getting into Tuesday afternoon to Tuesday evening. It wants to make landfall in Tampa Bay. Just south of Tampa Bay is a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure, which is probably a tropical storm. Okay, so it is much further south. Okay, just flat out hits the peninsula of Florida, then rides over central and northern Florida, comes back out over the ocean, maybe bring some nasty conditions for the immediate coastline of Georgia and South Carolina, maybe even North Carolina. And then this is as far out as it goes. Okay, has a pretty strong tropical storm just off the coast of the Carolinas sometime next Wednesday afternoon. So as you can tell, model guidance is everywhere. What I can show you is the latest European ensemble, which makes up 51 runs. Pretty strong signal we're going to get a tropical system. Okay, but I would say the further west this trends, the stronger system that we're going to have. Okay, I can tell you that right off the dot. It's going to be over land longer. It means that the trough is not digging as much, which means there's not going to be as much shear on top of the storm. So we need to watch this, but I can tell you it's really, the European ensemble is really zoned into the Big Bend areas, the eastern panhandle of Florida, as a Category 1 hurricane strong tropical storm. But then we got to watch out in Georgia, South Carolina, I mean, even watch out in Alabama, okay, because this will ride up, bring a lot of heavy rain. So I'm not going to show you wind speeds because we don't even know where this is going to make landfall. But what I will show you is the national, the blend of all models as far as rain. And a lot of this rain falls this weekend, but then here comes the rain from the tropics. Look how much this escalates, how fast this escalates as we're getting into midweek next week. And as you can tell, we'll take it all the way out to Friday morning. You got 4 to 5 inches of rain showing up for the Big Bend areas. At Tampa Bay, 5 inches of rain. Regardless, even ahead of this system, a pretty moist flow is going to surge into this region ahead of the front. So a lot of rain coming for most of Florida, southeast Alabama, Georgia, and we head on up to the Carolinas. Same thing. Look how much rain, South Carolina is going to get, for example, and North Carolina just into late Sunday, early next week. Okay, a lot of rain. 1 to 2 inches of rain is possible just from a moist flow that moves in. And then your tropical system moves in next week. And this is rainfall between now and basically this time next week, next Friday evening. Look how much rain. So anybody worrying about the drought, because drought conditions are brewing in the Carolinas, they're starting to escalate. We even got severe drought in some areas. Some of the trees are starting to look rough. Now, it's nothing compared to you folks out west. I don't want to even remotely close to compare this, but we're going to get soaking rains in the next several days. So enjoy the dry weather. I think next week is going to get pretty wild for the southeast. So that's the update on what is likely going to be Idalia. I want to give you an update on Franklin. Okay, don't want to leave you guys hanging. Franklin is highly sheared. We already talked about this flow coming out the west. This is the center of circulation with Franklin. I would argue this is barely a tropical storm right now, structure-wise, but it is popping up some pretty decent convection as the sun is setting. So this is maybe a sign that it's starting to re-get its act together. Bermuda right here. All right, one thing with the Bermuda today is you moved back into the cone of uncertainty. So there's been a little bit of a tick east with model guidance. So that's not good news for Bermuda. So we need to still watch this. Okay, but as of now, it's a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Okay, let's give it an update. Still 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Forecast to become a hurricane now sometime Sunday night into Monday morning. So, it's going to lag. Maybe there's a chance this maybe never does become a hurricane, but I think it will. And there's some model guidance showing it getting pretty close to Bermuda again, but forecast to be a hurricane by 2 p.m. Wednesday, way out here, basically between Nova Scotia and Bermuda. Latest model guidance, here comes the European. We'll start this Monday afternoon, and this makes a pretty close pass on the European. Bermuda is right where this cursor is right here. You got a Category 2 hurricane just to your west. It's close enough to bring some outer bands for sure. And then this heads on off and makes a stout turn. And look at this, the latest Euro doesn't even bother Nova Scotia or Newfoundland. It really doesn't. It gets very close to southeast Newfoundland, but never really bothers it. Okay, you look at the latest GFS. It's definitely further east with Franklin. Okay, I'm sorry, further west with Franklin. So GFS is a little bit of a more comforting run for you guys in Bermuda. It gets close to Nova Scotia, doesn't affect it, but the GFS still is pretty close to southeast Newfoundland. So I know you folks are tuning in this region and saying, Mitch, that wasn't a lot of great information, but just know that the models are still kind of going everywhere. All right. If we look at basically between now and Wednesday morning, Bermuda is right here where my cursor is. So you still got some runs that support this plowing into Bermuda as a hurricane. Okay, but most model guidance is still to your west. But this is all symbolizing this making a stout turn northeast, missing Nova Scotia, and maybe clipping Newfoundland. So that's the latest information on Franklin. Stay tuned, guys. I will keep you updated all weekend on this. Thank you all for tuning in. God bless, and y'all guys have a great Friday night.